Hello, everybody. Welcome to Live with Breathe America. We have a very, very cool episode for you guys tonight. I'm bringing on a friend of mine who is going to offer himself up as the token liberal to for you guys to ask questions from, and so that we can have a dialogue and maybe learn to understand where the liberal conversation comes from and some of the things that they believe. Maybe do away with some of the misconceptions that we all have about what liberals are. So that being said, without further ado, I would like to introduce you guys to a very good friend of mine. His name is Christopher Patch. Hello, Christopher. Welcome to Live with Breathe America.
Hi. Thanks for inviting me to do this. This is going to be fun. I'm excited. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So you guys, just so you know, we are having a little bit of a delayed reaction, so we might talk over each other a little bit. We're going to do the best we can to make sure we keep it running smooth. Feel free to ask us whatever questions you guys want to ask in the comment section, and we will be looking at those as we go through. But I would like to start with, first and foremost, Christopher, what do you find to be the most misconstrued idea about being a liberal?
Well, I think there's a lot of vitriol on both sides, but the things that we continue to get as, I guess, quote, liberal, and I don't want to say that I speak for all liberals, but probably the biggest thing is that, or the dog whistle stuff that you hear is you hate America, or you're communist, or why do you... when people find out that I'm a devout Christian, they're also pretty blown back. So there are those things that are assumed, and the things that we assume tend to get us in trouble. So that and I guess a little bit of a background from me. I was born and raised conservative evangelical. I've lived in Idaho the majority of my life. I was born here. My parents were born here. My grandparents were born here. And so I do understand where conservatives come from, which probably gives me a little bit of a empathy and if not love for the conservatives on that side, just because they're my family. I'm married to one. So, it's just where I sit. So I want there to be understanding, and I hate having, I'm okay with debate. I don't like, when, you're closed-minded. When you start saying that someone else is closed-minded, I think that means that we're all closed-minded right now, and that the conversation needs to end, and we need to come back and redo it. So I guess that's where I sit, and I do have that understanding of where those words come from, even though they're all emotion and no backing to them. Vice versa, by the way, the liberal side has a lot of horrible things to say to the conservative side too, and so there's that.
Yeah, I've found, especially recently with Breathe America and trying to facilitate these types of conversations, that one of the easiest outs that everybody has is they're emotionally charged on a subject, so they just simply attack the person and they want to shut down the conversation. Now, this is both conservatives and liberals, and I find it interesting that everybody wants to shut it down through calling names and the same old traditional stereotypes. And anybody that's been watching long enough should know that I like to challenge all of that stuff anyways. So, and this is one of the things that's interesting. Like, Christopher and I actually grew up together. We went to high school together. And, so he absolutely, we grew up in the same area, and him and I have drastically different views, but we're not enemies. And this idea that we have to hate liberals, or if you're a conservative, you have to hate liberals. And if you're a liberal, you have to hate conservatives. I'm telling you guys, it's completely flawed. The way this country works the best is when liberal ideas and conservative ideas can come together for actual change, right? So that's my perception on the biggest misnomer.
Yeah, that's huge. I think, and coming from someone who and this is going to be some liberal reading, but if anyone's interested, it's called the um, by Paulo Freire, who is the former Secretary of Education, Minister of Education from Brazil. But he wrote a book called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And he said that when you dehumanize someone, you dehumanize yourself. In the process of dehumanization, no one wins. And so I really try hard to humanize people. And even the people that on a national level I struggle with, I really try to humanize them. I'll give them an identity that most people understand with. Like that person at least is a father, and they understand that, right? Or that person is a human being, just on the very basis and essence of who they are a human being. So I need to treat them, and that's where we all can come together and unify at a basis. We're all humans. And then we back off a little bit. Well, we're all humans. We all like food. And that's overly simplistic, but it's a point. Like we can all come together, hopefully, and be civil. Most of us like other parts that I was going to say, like beer, but not all of us like beer. I'm a person that likes beer or coffee or what have you. And so we start getting these things that we all can come together and say, hey, there are things that we can unify over. And instead of focusing on the divisiveness, let's start there and then work our way out. But I'm open for more questions.
So something you said there caught my attention when you mentioned, like, even on a national scale, people that you disagree with, and we see a lot of attacks on the liberal side against President Trump. Now, I'm curious, have you humanized him?
I struggled with that for a long time, to humanize him. So the one thing is, he is a father. He loves his family. You can't look at him and go, oh, that SOB doesn't even love his children. I disagree. Now, there are some things they've said, and the joke, about him and his daughter and stuff. I've never had a daughter. I really couldn't tell you the ways that I would feel about a daughter, so I'm going to leave it at that. But I did struggle with it. It was hard because there are a number of things that I can point at and go, ooh, I don't like that, and I don't like this, and I don't like this. But at a very basic point, he is a father. He's a son. He's a brother who just lost his brother. That's hard, right? So I empathize for him on that. I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to lose my brother. And that's where I'm at now. Now, as far as empathizing with him, as far as his paradigm, it's going to be difficult because I did not grow up the same way, in the same region, as well as completely different backgrounds. So when I hear things that are said, I do struggle with a lot of them. And I got to start thinking that I get back into my understanding of how does our system work, and then I go back to what were some of the things that I hold presidents at across the board from now until Washington. What were some of the things that I have criticized all of them for? And am I being fair to this president? And so hopefully I am.
Yeah. I think that with Trump, especially with Trump, it seems that he has been attacked more aggressively than any president I've ever seen. And in a lot of ways, I think that's earned. In a lot of ways, I think that's not earned. But it's difficult to humanize somebody when because on the left we see an actual hate for the man, and that is hard for me. I try, and I believe in not hating anybody. So I try to spread a lot of love and positivity to everybody, even the people that we don't like. And I think that on the liberal side, we see such an aggressive attack towards him on such a consistent basis that it's difficult to rationalize the why. Because for conservatives, we look past what the media says and we look at the policies and the bills and the things like that, and we see things that we like. And so therefore we apply that to the fact that we like this president. But on the liberal side of things, all they see is, at least from our perspective, is that the left is after him and the media is after him, and it's just attack after attack after attack that we think is unwarranted. So it has created one hell of a divide amongst us.
Sure. I guess taking on the liberal perspective, there are things more on the fundamental level that I look at, and on the specific side, issues with the emoluments clause, the impeachment stuff. I do know that I believe that Democrats could have done the impeachment way better in the House, because that was historically speaking, it was sped up way too fast, and I know why they did it. I don't agree with it. I think they should have gone the judiciary route on that, because there are some legal questions that should have been answered. But it happened, and nonetheless, with the impeachment side of things, there are some things where there are issues of corruption, and the issues of corruption within the articles. I got to think back, because it feels like a really long time ago right now, but it really wasn't. Actually, the two things the articles are. Look at them. I can't even remember what the articles are anymore. It feels like a long time ago. But I know one of the articles was was it collusion? Again, I'm going to have to remember. I got to look back. It's been such a long time. Almost an entire year ago, I think, that happened. So,
well, we've had a lot happen since then.
I know. You're starting to think it. You compound it, and you're like, "Geez, what a whirlwind." But there's a lot of things that I can point at and say that I don't like them, and there are policies that I don't like. Tariffs, I'm not for those in these instances. I think that was a bad idea. Now, here's a praise. Something needs to be done with China, and I've been advocating for something to be done about China ever since Bush, and they do not an existential threat. I don't think China's an existential threat, but they are a power-based threat that I have a problem with on a foreign policy level. So I think he's handling it, but I don't think he's doing a good job, because there's other means to go about it, except with Huawei. I think he's doing a good job with Huawei, because you can't hand over your infrastructure to a totalitarian regime with power. That's a bad idea.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I'm a huge fan of tariffs, and let me explain why. I'm a fan of the U.S. government making money that doesn't come from my pocket a lot, actually. I think it's a great idea. I think that we should balance the playing field. And as a union worker and somebody who has fought to make a living and support a family, tariffs mean it opens up manufacturing and it levels the playing field for these companies so that we can keep jobs in America. So I'm actually a big fan of tariffs in general. Now, I do think there's a way that they should be done and a way that they shouldn't be done. But that being said, overall, I was really happy that he decided to address this issue in the first place. And it looks like Christopher is frozen, but we'll see if that clears up in a second. I'm going to drop him off so we don't have to look at him. And I'll let you guys know if he moves again. But yeah, for me personally, tariffs are a great option for the government to make money that doesn't come from our pockets. Christy asked a really great comment. And Christopher, if you can still hear me, if you leave and come back, there you go. He just left, so he's probably working on that. Christy, I was going to get to this comment. That was the first one I was going to get to. I liked it. So if he comes back, we will jump right on that and have that discussion with him. Let me scroll through some of these other things here. Carrie asked an interesting question. I'll answer some of these for myself. Yes, I do think he loves this country. I think he has a very different view of this country than most people, though, because of the way that he's been raised and the way that he has, the life that he has lived. And his perception is very, very different, So for many people, that's difficult. Oh, what do we have him? Welcome back, Christopher.
That was weird.
Yeah, you just froze up. So while you were gone, I addressed a little bit more about tariffs, and I want you to. I'm going to throw Christy's questions up here. It just says, "How do you feel about him standing up for religious freedom since you are a Christian?"
Oh, that's a good question. I say whose religious freedom is usually what I ask. If it's a traditional Judeo-Christian religious freedom, yeah, then he's probably more than likely he is doing that. However, I don't exist in the evangelical realm anymore. As much as I love the evangelical church, I had to leave based on I wouldn't say dogmatic, however, application of theology. So I couldn't stick around. But not all Christians also agree with that too. So I'll throw that out there. But as far as religious liberty, use air quotes. The First Amendment talks about the freedom, the Establishment Clause, right? So we cannot establish religion. And anytime we favor one religion over the other when it comes to theology, then we start to establish that. There's also the free exercise thereof, right? So that would be the other part, the free exercise clause. That would be, yeah, you're free to do things. Like you are free to go and worship the way you want. You're free to do other things. But when you start taking your freedom to exercise your religion, and then you force that freedom on other people, or your beliefs on other people on a dogmatic or theological realm, I start taking issue with that. I don't think you have the ability to do that. Go back to the what is it? Hobby Lobby case. They're Catholic, which is fine, but they are not for being forced to give contraceptive health to women. I think that's unfair. You're running a business. That's not their faith, but now you're forcing your faith on others people's faith. And that's not the way that the Supreme Court saw it. They saw it the other way around in a 5-4 decision. So it starts to become this fine line of this religious freedom. And it's a difficult one. I do believe in religious freedom, but we have to be careful in whose we talk about. And so I as a practicing Christian, I think fight for it. But it's your faith. It's not your right to impose your faith on others.
Carrie asked a question. Do you think he loves this country?
He meaning Trump?
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yep.
I mean, as his version of the country, yes. I think the way that he wants things to be, that is what he loves. I'm not quite sure. Like I said, I do struggle with humanizing him, and my gut sense always goes to no. I don't think he loves anyone outside of really himself. But then I got to check myself and go, he's still a human being, and there is a certain way he wants things to go. I mean, he is a conservative. obviously, and so it's hard to judge one's heart. I hate doing that, and when I find myself doing that, I like to stop myself and say, "That's not my job."
You said something there that I think is interesting, and I want to touch on. So I'll get to more questions here in a second. But you said he's a conservative. Trump's actually a lifelong Democrat, and he switched parties because they were going to run Hillary either way, and so he had no chance of being successful running on the Democratic ticket. Is this fact something that liberals struggle with? Because as a lifelong Democrat, he was loved by the left for a long time, and yet the moment he switched parties and became a Republican by title, I mean, the Republicans hated him too in the beginning. So, is this? I'm curious how a liberal sees this.
Even if he ran as a liberal, I wouldn't vote for him. And this would be because I wouldn't have voted for Bloomberg for one big reason that I don't believe anyone who wields that much influence via money is worthy of the office of the presidency. Now, that is hypocritical and not well within the realm of history, right? There's a lot of very rich people like George Washington that became president. But I struggle with people that think because I'm rich, I'm smart. And I don't care for that. So that's why I'm not a fan of Bloomberg. Which he kind of oscillates too, right? Bloomberg does. So I'm not sure if I see that as a opportunism move, or if he truly was a blue dog Democrat. He's a conservative Democrat, and he could have been, and then swapped. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. He did. I remember in I can't remember if he was in an interview or if he was in a debate when he was asked the question about him giving money to the Clinton campaign. And he said that he did so expecting favors back, and that everyone does that. So that is true, right? Whenever you give a large sum to a campaign, you expect to have a seat at the lobbying table. And we've talked about that a lot, and we both, I think, can agree that that's a problem, right?
Oh yeah, I have a huge problem with lobbying in general.
Yeah, I would probably put a qualifier on that. I have a huge problem with the inequality of lobbying, because you and I cannot go and have lunch with our senators and convince them to vote for a bill or not vote for a bill. I can call his office as much as I want, and I will continue to get that teenage piece of face, intern on the other side that has no idea what they're doing, writing down notes, and eventually will be typing out a piecemealed together letter to be sent to me. That's the way it is. So I don't like it. I would like to see it change, but who knows?
So
we'll fix.
Steve threw up a question for you, and it just says that you and him have bumped heads in the comments a few times, and apparently
there we go. Now I can see comments. Hooray!
But his question is, what are your perceptions and opinions on defunding the police movement?
Oh no, but
his question is, what are your perceptions and opinions on defunding?
Yeah, well, Steve, I want to say thank you for being on here. I read your comments, and I really appreciate your candor and being able to speak your mind without being abusive via the language, and that I really appreciate that. Defunding the police. Here's my problem with the defunding movement, is that the language. Whoever decided to come up with this, I just want to take them and shake them like a baby. I just don't. It bugs me because we need police. We just need them. But I'm more along the lines of reforming the police or reallocating funds for the police. I don't like the militarization of the police. That is one thing that I just do not like. But when you get a bunch of people like grab a huge amount of money because of the Patriot Act and chuck it at the police, I mean, what are you going to do? Well, sure, I'll go out and buy a bunch of, Kevlar vests and guns and anti-riot gear and tanks for the most part, the APCs they have. I don't believe we should be defunding them, but at the same time, I struggle with the military to police pipeline. I don't think that is the right route for our police. And this comes from my grandfather was a police officer. He walked the beat in Boise, and then he moved up to Vice Squad in Lewiston and came back down for the ATF. And he was in it all his life. He loved being a police officer. I think he was a decent one. But there is a code of blue, and that if someone does something wrong, and I'm a teacher, if I know a teacher is doing something wrong, I'm not going to think twice about throwing them under the bus. And the reason is that when one teacher goes off and does something that's really, really stupid, we as humans like to generalize that. And we say, hey, you must all like to diddle kids. And no, we don't, right? But cops don't like to kill people. I don't know anyone that likes to kill people. And if I do, they're sociopaths. So the defunding part, I hate the language. I like the ideas around reforming the police, getting social work involved, getting mental health workers involved, doing different trainings with de-escalations in some cases. But if you look at Boise, even though Boise still uses those I forgot what they call them, where they tackle them and chokeholds, the chokehold things and stuff. Boise's never used them in the last 2 or 3 years. They've only had 145 violent altercations out of 150,000 calls. So it's a very small number. Now, Boise is not a good example, because we're a homogeneous society. We're typically upper middle class, and we have a very low crime rate. Go somewhere else, it'll probably be different. So that's just kind of where I sit on the defund part. I don't like the language. I like the ideas. That was a long explanation. Anytime you want me to
defunding the police is
go ahead and interrupt me.
Yeah, defunding the police is a hot topic right now. I know on the page and in the group, there's a lot of conservatives that are struggling to find out or to understand what this whole thing. And I agree with you. I think the language is horrible. And this idea that like we have congresswomen speaking out and saying they want to completely defund the police and do away with them altogether. I think that's a ridiculous thought. And I think that we need to be a little bit more open-minded about what needs to change and how that change actually will affect us in the long run.
Is it working?
Now, is what working? Scroll down to current comments. I'm not saying anything, so I think you're here. All right, so Christopher's I just dropped him out so that we can bring him back up here in a second. So let's add him back and see if that helps. So everything good? All right, I'm going to make an executive decision here. It looks like we're having some issues with the connection here.
Can you hear me?
I can. You're coming in and out, bud. Sorry, I had to take care of that real quick. So, Mike, I just sent you an invite. If you're able to jump on, and we'll continue this conversation a little bit differently. Christopher, it's not audio. It's just simply lag at this point. If you jump out and reload the page, it might be a little bit better. So in the meantime, I'm going to bring on a very good friend of mine who's also, well, I don't want to classify him. I'm sorry. I can't do it because he confuses me all the time. And everybody, this is Mike. And Mike, I can't put into any bubble that works or any box that works because his ideas are very, very different. So hopefully we have a better connection with Mike, and we can try see if Christopher jumps back in here. We'll try again, but we're gonna, because Mike's he leans I would call him a independent that leans liberal. I would not call him a liberal though, because some of his ideas are very conservative and yet some of them are very liberal. So he's an interesting guy. He kind of reminds me of me in a lot of ways, which is fun. And anybody that doesn't know, him and I share a birthday, which is kind of crazy. He was the first person I ever met in my life that I share a birthday with. So say hello to everybody, Mike.
Hi, how's everybody doing tonight?
Oh, that's much better audio. You sound great. So we left off on the defund the police conversation, and there's a question over here that's asking, so who pays for all the free stuff that liberals want to give away? Free college, healthcare, the Green New Deal, ... So that's an interesting question because nobody on the conservative side, I know everybody's like, where's all this money going to come from? And on the liberal side, it's like money's, doesn't seem to be much of an issue. So what are your thoughts on that?
So typically from a left side perspective, we view clearing up a lot of the corruption to be the source of that money. Simply if we actually made some of the large corporations that get away with the biggest tax benefits and breaks, if we made them actually pay their taxes, that's a large share of that money. If we institute something like I can't think of the term for it right this second, but like a benefit added tax for like big tech industries, that would cover a large cost. A lot of things, their price reduction comes in and of itself by taking care of a lot of the government lobbied contracts involved. Just for instance, if you take things like Medicare and Medicaid, right? Half of why that and Obamacare costs so much is because they're pretty much run by big pharma and the medical industry. We don't limit their ability to profit at all. We don't set even pricing standards to where we can get like comparable benefits, comparable rates. So like one of the best ways that I could put it is just in clearing up some of the healthcare cost, right? You get rid of synthetic THC pills, which big pharmaceutical industries are profiting greatly off of. I don't know if you guys know this, but for a month prescription of THC pills, it's like $800 to $1,000 for a generic version for something that people could grow in their closets. So a lot of these things go hand in hand when you look at the left, because a lot of it ties into place and it pays for each other.
So Christopher's back. Let's bring him back on. The question that Mike is, well, we'll see if he'll come back on. Nope. Doesn't want to join. Sorry, Christopher. Try to jump on through your cell phone. It might work a little bit better than the laptop that you're using. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm not a big fan of big pharma or big pharma. I think that's pretty ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that they do are absolutely corrupt, as far as I'm concerned, and the regulating the profits on these kind of companies, man, that goes against capitalism. Like, and it affects me in a very visceral kind of way, right? Because I believe in capitalism, but at the same time, I also don't believe that a 12,000% markup over cost is ethical, moral, or right. So,
right,
and those things happen all the time. All the time that happens.
I think it's important to note that a lot of people on the left, they're not pushing for, there's definitely some of them, but there's a lot that aren't pushing for full-blown socialism. They're pushing for a more ethical form of capitalism that incorporates some ideas of socialism in the right ways.
Gotcha. Now, I'm sure we could probably talk about how to pay for it and all those kind of things for days, because I know you and I can talk for days. But this is a fun question from one of your favorite people. So there it is on the screen. And you have the beauty of being able to answer his question without him interrupting you, which is always fun.
Oh, that's a treat. That's new.
Love you, John.
So I will say this. I don't get into a lot of the religious aspects of stuff. I do recognize that it does some good in the world, and I want people to be able to believe what they believe. But as far as specific cases like that, I couldn't really say much without knowing more. I think a lot of politicians using religion to pander is horrible bullshit. Like, it doesn't matter who we're talking about, if we're talking about a current president or any of the last 14. Most of them aren't as religious as they try to tout. And I think that it's a weapon that's used to get religious people to back them. So I know that didn't really answer the question well, but I did what I could.
Okay, Christopher's back on a different device, it looks like. So let's see what we got. Hey, you're
Hi.
back. All right.
It looks like it's running a little better.
It does. It looks good. Christopher's back with us. Sorry, Mike. I had to throw that last comment up there because apparently Billy wanted everybody to know that you are single.
Of course. I was almost worried this was going to turn into an auction.
Yeah, hey, it's been talked about. I want you to know, just so you just fair warning.
It's the beard.
It's always the beard.
My beard looks horrible right now because I was not planning on being on camera.
Well, let's go to Mike's question. Mike, you want to ask him a question?
I was responding to another question with that. They asked how leftists perceive him not being a politician, Trump by him.
Right.
And my response was basically that to a lot of us, it doesn't matter. To us, him not being a politician is him skipping a step. Businessmen use lobbying and super PACs and all that type of stuff to get politicians in their pocket and get what they want. He went a more direct course. That doesn't mean he's any less corrupt. It just means he skipped some steps.
So Mariah put a comment up about the blue code, the no snitching policy, and I just wanted to throw it up here and say, yes, that 100% has to change. We need to hold our police up to the same standard that we hold ourselves up to, or a higher one, in fact. So I agree with that completely.
Do you mind if I comment on that, on Mike's question there?
No, not at all. Go ahead.
The one thing that kind of bugs me, and this is more of closer to why my background is actually in political science, but Trump is a politician. By the very nature of what he's doing makes him a politician. So he ran for an office, therefore he is a politician. And I know that what people like about him is that he is not the career politician, I think is what you can call it.
Sure.
But if anything, I don't have a problem with career politicians because I understand the system of what legislation means and how legislation works. It would be nice to get rid of the perpetual seniority issue. I myself wrote my own term limits amendment to see if I can just kind of think about what would term limits look like on a federal level. And I think that if you're on the legislative branch, say in total, you can run for 20 years. Once you serve 20 years in the legislative branch, you're done. So that means you can run for 10 terms in the House, or you can run for, well, that wouldn't mathematically work for the Senate, so whatever. But anyways, you get what I'm saying. But there's something to be said about people that truly understand how the system works. And like reading Profiles in Courage by JFK, there's a point to say, how do you compromise with one another? And when do you hold your ground? When are you willing to die on your cross, so to speak, which was a term that he used quite often? I don't know. Honestly, it's really difficult to say that how compromise works, but compromise is important. And I'm not sure how much I see compromise from this current administration when it comes to certain things. Now, I will point out a couple of things with compromise that they have. The first bill that came out for the pandemic relief, that was some good compromise. That was quick. It was good, decisive response. I'm trying to think of other examples of current compromise. But, I mean, hell, our nation got started on a compromise, so it's a good thing.
So Chuck asked an interesting question and says, if you tax the rich or companies at an extremely high rate, as our liberals like to say, their fair share, they would leave the country. So no jobs for nobody to pay for, but the middle class and the poor. What are your thoughts on that? You're muted, Mike. You did it yourself. I didn't do it.
I'll let Chris go first.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I understand that, and that's called supply side economics, which I don't buy into, because here's the thing. If you say that if you tax, well, and I want to throw companies and the rich, and I'm going to separate those two, because not all companies, I don't view companies as people. I know the Supreme Court and the law does, but I don't. So I'd separate that. Let's go with individual rich people. Uh, if Jeff Bezos is taxed at a 95% rate, let's say he has $100 billion, because I know he's close to that, or else he's has an issue. He still has $5 billion left. To say that he's not going to be rich or not going to employ people anymore is actually untrue. And you can look at that historically too. After World War II, we had a 95% tax rate on anyone who made over $2 million. And that's adjusted for real money, right? So it was a huge amount of taxes. And what happened is that taxes was actually taken and it was given to people. And we call it the GI Bill. And it's the largest wealth transfer from the top 10% to everyone else. And it caused this huge GDP growth. And what I, as a liberal, really want to push for is it is more important for money to be in the hands of the poor and the middle class as giant wealth, as the most wealth should be there, not in the top 10 or 1%. That's more important because being demand side, Jeff Bezos can't buy as much milk as 300 million people can. And Jeff Bezos cannot buy as many cars as 300 million people can, or TVs or washing machines or what have you. And so that demand spurs a heck of a lot more economic growth than Jeff Bezos having $100 billion. So am I for taxing the rich? Yep, I am. And I think I am a progressive tax person. I know when we were talking about, a true progressive tax system, the one we have now is regressive. It's the opposite. The more you make, the less you're taxed, which is the opposite of what I think should happen. So I hope that answers that. Companies, that's a sticky wicket because companies are a machination. They're not a person in my mind. They are a cog and they're a machine and they're meant to work in a certain way. And their literal reason to exist is to make money. And you don't want to stifle that. So, corporate tax cut by Trump wasn't a bad idea. But I would also say that if Amazon and other companies like that are paying zero taxes, I have a problem with that. So that would be kind of what I say. There's a happy medium, though. I'm not saying that they should be taxed at 95%. Not at all. But 50%, 70%, I don't know. But I get taxed more than most millionaires or billionaires even. And I'm a teacher. At a percentage, by the way, not nominal dollars.
Mike, what are your thoughts?
So I'm a pretty interesting case when it comes to taxing the rich and taxing corporations. I think that there's a lot of credence behind something like a flat tax across the board. I think there's a lot of credence to use taxes as behavioral modifiers. I personally think that, some of these corporations that are exporting all of our labor, exporting our production to Mexico and China, exporting our call centers to India, exporting our money to the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. I think if we had taxes in place that were a scaling tax based on how much of your employment is outsourced, that could be a useful tool. I think that if we started enforcing some of our tax codes and making certain things not able to be deducted against, it could be a useful tool. So I'm kind of a unique perspective there. I don't really find my views on these things shared by too many people.
I have a couple thoughts to add on that question from a different perspective. number one is if companies are legally recognized as people, essentially, then why are they not taxed as people? So the idea that we shouldn't tax companies kind of goes out the window with that from a legal standpoint, anyways, for me, because they've already made them, legally people in the eyes of Congress and the Supreme Court. Chuck makes a point about people or that these companies would take their work and leave. And that's where tariffs come into place.
They
right?
already
That's
have.
why. Sure, but if our tax scale was different enough that they felt like they had to leave America, then in order to continue to do business here, they have to pay to bring those products and services back to America, and that's what a tariff is designed to do. So that might balance that field out a little bit and keep them here. The 95% tax rate you brought up, obviously that's completely unethical. And I couldn't get behind something like that. I do get behind the idea of a flat tax, and I think it's, and even like what Mike said, a progressive tax based on how much of your business is outsourced for companies and stuff like that would be great. For the American people, I think it should be a flat tax. For the companies that are here and all the way, producing their products and selling their products in America, it should all be the same flat rate, period. And I think it would simplify a complicated tax issue that would make things a whole lot better for the average American, because our percentage we would see start to go down, and yet our services we could see go up if the government was willing to step in and do the right thing from an ethical standpoint with some of these corporations like, big pharma and things like that, pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. Somebody in the comments mentioned a liver medication costing $10,000 a month. I have a very good friend who has cystic fibrosis, and he actually had to get a government grant because his medications are over $100,000 a month.
Oh God.
So I do want to add in just one more
That's
thing.
so wrong.
And he would not be alive if it weren't for those things, right? Like, plain and simple. But if it weren't for that grant, he would be dead. And these medicines are available. And here's the sad thing. There are people that have cystic fibrosis that need to be on that medication that are dying because they can't get it and they didn't qualify for the grant for whatever reason, right? And that happens all the time in this system, and that is wrong. So
I'd just like to add one more thing, that we tend to prop up corporations very heavily here. If you go to strict, like actual capitalistic beliefs, bailouts shouldn't happen. And we talk about what's going to happen if these companies leave the country and all that type of stuff. Well, then we rebuild here. We make manufacturing here. Screw those companies. And we lose that idea constantly. We don't need those companies. Those companies need us. They need our money.
it's a very,
We can always learn how to reproduce something. We can always have another startup company take over production. We can do a countless amount of things. We don't need those corporations. They need us and our money.
it's very true.
Yeah. The one thing that you'd have to do with that, and this goes into what Patrick was talking about, tariffs originally were designed to protect budding companies. So the auto industry, steel, coal, oil industry all had tariffs that were placed on it during the Gilded Age to protect them. The problem is when they got big enough and you continue to tax them or continue to tax tariffs of other things that come in, that's passed on to consumers. And consumers start paying those taxes instead of the country that's being has a tariff on it. That's why you see Whirlpool and GE, when that steel tariff went through, their prices went up about $20 for a washer and $20 for a dryer, because the tariff doesn't need to protect Whirlpool or GE. They're too big, and that's some of the problems with tariffs. Is it's a protection tactic, and it doesn't make a whole lot of tax wealth. If anything, you see it lost through the ability for people to purchase certain items. And so it would be interesting to see how tariffs will be used in the example that you gave there, Mike. I'd like to see that play out. I think that might work.
What's interesting, though, is you're right about tariffs, and that is exactly how they're designed, and that cost does get passed on to the consumer. But what it also does, it opens the door for other companies to come in and sell their products at a cheaper price that are produced here in the United States to actually compete with these big companies. And as like I'm a big believer in buying American and buying local if you can and things like that. And so if more of us adopted that philosophy, and we said, you know what, as far as GE, and I can get this washer or this dryer that's just as good as a GE, but it's a little bit cheaper and it's made entirely in America. And if we were to make our decisions as consumers like that, we would not necessarily see that cost transferred onto the consumer. Steve brought up a question I think is interesting, and Mike, I totally did this because of you. Just so you know, I've totally set you up for this. But he's interested to know what you guys think about the Speaker of the House, Pelosi.
I'm going to give you my normal response. It's nice and short and sweet. Yep. Pelosi's a demon.
Mike's not a huge fan. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I'll be 100% honest. I didn't vote for Pelosi. I don't get to vote for Pelosi. So I just don't care about Pelosi because the person that represents me, Mike Simpson, in the state of Idaho, gets to vote for me. Now, sometimes, very, very rarely, I'm like, yay, Mike Simpson, you did something right. But he's one of the most senior representatives in the House outside of Don Young from Alaska, who's been in there since 1972. Term limits there, Patrick. So it's really important to remember I didn't vote for her unless, like Steve, if you live in the Bay Area and you voted for her or voted against her, then yeah, you could say I hate Pelosi and I want to see her gone. Awesome. She is, 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. I don't think she would ever get there. As well as she, as much as people don't like her, she is a smart lady. Like, I would not cross her politically because 1, she has power, and 2, she's very smart. Just like Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is one guy I would not want to play chess with because he is smart as hell. But do I agree with him? No, politically, no, not at all. But I would probably never win a race against him because he's good.
He's good at playing the very old game, a game that's been around for a very, very long time. And this is this idea of right versus left. This is this idea of let's continue to divide us. Let's continue to, why is it every election cycle we hear the same issues come up every election cycle, whether it's for senators, whether it's for congressmen, or whether it's for president, right? And it's all because we fall for this trap over and over and over again. So regardless of how good Nancy is or Chuck is or any of these people are playing that old game, it's my belief that it's time to change the game. It's time for the American people to take back control of our country and to literally move into a direction where we consent to be governed and we take a very active role in that governing. And we talk to our representatives and we change it. And look, you brought up a good point. Mike Simpson is he has a lot of seniority in the House right now. But even with all that seniority, do you think that he'll ever be elected Speaker of the House?
No, because he's done a couple of things that, he's gone against some things that Trump wanted. Didn't make him very popular. He's definitely a pro-agriculture guy. But I don't think he would. He's not sexy enough.
Well, the argument for small states with especially going up against term limits, is the best thing for small states is to continue to send the same representative back over and over and over again so they can gain some level of seniority in the House and then be able to actually be effective at getting things passed, right? This is one of the greatest arguments I've ever heard against term limits because it actually makes sense, right? So by going to term limits and doing away with the seniority issue, because once you apply term limits, you got to realize however long that time limit is, in that amount of time, you will have everybody there at that amount of time. So how do you deal with the seniority issue? Now, if it's a popularity thing, then the states with the least amount of representative are still screwed. So again, how do you address this issue? You said you wrote a bill about term limits. How do you address this issue?
Well, it was going to be a total time. Like, air traffic controllers, they can only work for 20 years. And I mean, why not in Congress? Like, just limit them to the amount of time they could spend. It doesn't take someone. I mean, 1972. Let's wrap our minds around being in there since 1972.
Hey, Pelosi's been in since Kennedy.
Yeah. So if you start wrapping your mind around how long certain people have been in there, I think 40 years is a little too long. So I struggle with that, and I understand small states don't necessarily pull a lot of weight when it comes to the House, but it is rather important. And also think that Idaho did have like Frank Church and William Borah, and those two were pretty important people in Congress.
Sure.
But as I digress, but it's important to go off with you were saying. It is very important to note that we reelect Congress at a 95% rate. So if there's 100 people running, 95 of them are going to win their incumbency. It's just what it's going to happen. And 5 of them will lose their places. And they're typically moderates that lose. So that's why you start seeing a further divide, because when I run, and if I ran Republican for Idaho, I could win. I would lie through my teeth, but I could win because I know exactly what to say to get people to vote for me. But I have a conscience as well.
Oh, man, it sucks that he froze right there because I think it is about to get good. What are your thoughts, Mike? You got yourself muted, bro.
What was the original question again?
It was about the term limits and how to deal with seniority. Is that something you've ever dug into?
It is. I think it's not the real root issue that we need to be talking about. I
agree.
One of the real root issues we need to be talking about there is that the presidential election isn't the only one that matters. We need to get out there and vote for every small local election, every state election. We need to get the people in Senate and the House. We need to get Congress out. We need to get people that actually want to serve the interests of the people in and not the interests of the biggest corporations in the country. We need to get people in there who, quite frankly, are willing to revert things back to how they should be. Congress shouldn't be getting a $70,000 bonus while they send out $1,000 checks to all the American people.
I agree.
70% of the payroll protection program shouldn't be going out to 13% of already rich corporations. We need to do everything that we can to get good people in there and not let these shitty people get anywhere close to term limits, anywhere close to being in there for 40 years while they do this shit.
I think one of the interesting things about both of your guys' perspective on term limits, and one of my personal perspectives on this idea, is that moving forward as a country, we're at a pivotal point right now, you guys. And what I think is something that we fail to recognize is that 95% reelection rate in Congress for incumbents, right? That's not their fault. That's our fault. We're doing that. we're not active enough. We're not involved enough. Enough of us aren't running. We're not talking. We're not speaking out. We're not showing up at the polls to say, I'm tired of that dumbass. And that's something.
2020.
Huh? John Lee 2020? Honestly, guys, this is, when I talk, there's a lot of different subjects we talk about through my morning thoughts, through, these shows, through the modcast. And the one thing that I keep challenging every single one of you guys is to look within, right? The answers are with you. We are the solution. The solution is going to the polls and voting. The solution is getting rid of the people that are there. The solution is finding your voice and letting it be heard. That is ultimately how we're going to, that's the best way we can deal with the things that are right in front of us right now. If we saw, if that 95% incumbent reelection rate was swapped, and they saw a 95% reelection rate, like new members of Congress, a completely new House, a completely new Senate, all those people were gone, what do you think happens? We get a whole bunch of brand new ideas to look at. Everything changes, so
I think, yeah.
If you want term limits and that's your big thing, then don't vote for the guy that's been in office for 40 years. Right? Like, speak out about that. Run against him. Take some of those votes away from him if you want to. Do whatever you got to do, but get involved. Go ahead, Chris.
There's the other. There's the other side of things to where the dual party system we're talking about, and some people will say, "Well, I'll never vote for a Democrat or I'll never vote for a Republican," and that's also the reason why we have a 95% rate. And we were joking the other day, Patrick and I were, because I voted for Brad Little, who's the Republican governor now. He voted for the Democrat, Jordan.
Jorgensen? No,
Jordan.
Jordan.
Paulette Jordan. Who I know, an absolutely amazing human being. As an educator, I couldn't vote for her because she's not huge on public ed, but she's
thanks
got some good ideas.
Calling out my voting record in front of all of Idaho, bro. I appreciate that. But no, I did not vote for Little. I personally, I think the man's an asshole, and like the way he talks, the way he acts, everything about the way he interacts with the people, it bothers me. It bothers me a great deal. And one of the things I love about Idaho is one of the most famous governors we ever had was Cecil Anders. So in a state that is red as they come, we had a Democrat governor that served as many terms as he wanted to, and the people absolutely loved him. And he offered balance, and we had that balance for a long time. But ever since he retired, we've lost that. We don't have that same kind of balance anymore. We have a predominantly one-sided argument every single time an issue comes up.
And he was Secretary of Interior under Reagan.
Yeah. Cecil was a good dude.
Yeah. Well, and look, when he died, I don't think, Butch Otter was just, I don't like him, but he had one heck of a eulogy. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I didn't like him either. But hey, guys, we are over an hour already, so let's wrap it up, you guys. I know we had a lot more questions that we didn't get to. Chris and I have been talking about, and maybe Chris and I and Mike will talk about this more in the future. Maybe we'll make this a regular segment on a regular time, where we do this kind of a conversation where we talk literally just like this. And so go ahead, Mike. What do you want to wrap up with?
Not much. I just kind of stepped in here. I'm gonna leave the floor to Chris.
All right, thanks, brother. I appreciate you jumping in on with that. That would have been really shitty if I'd have been stuck here alone talking to myself.
And everybody out there, you'll see me again soon. I think I'm gonna be on Monday. So
yeah, I think we're doing the Monday podcast with Mike. So it'll be a good time.
Later, guys.
Nah.
Later, Mike. All right, Chris. Yeah, go ahead and wrap it up, man. What are your thoughts?
Well, I appreciate Mike jumping on and being the ad-libbing everything. That's great. Yeah, my thing is like I said, I'm an educator, so I push for education. Get out there, read the Constitution, because a lot of people haven't done that. If you don't understand it, reach out to people and help to understand, and know that our system is designed the way it is for a reason, and it needs to work the way it's designed. And so, understand that, and get out there, know who you're voting for. If you don't know how to research any of that stuff, reach out to us. Project Vote Smart is a really good website I like going to. 270 to Win is another good website. And so we'll be back.
Absolutely, Chris. I want to thank you for being on, and I want everybody watching to know that this was actually Chris's idea. You know, we had talked about it before, but you know, for him to come on and share his thoughts and opinions with you guys is really awesome, and I appreciate it. And you know, once an educator, always an educator, because he just can't help wanting to teach and make a difference for people. So, Christopher, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. You couldn't believe that 20 years later, after high school, we'd be doing this.
Yeah, we've never talked since high school, right? Like I've hardly kept in touch with anybody. I just went on and lived my life, which is kind of just how it's been. And you know what? Here we are, you know, all because of Facebook. Who knew, right?
Yeah,
this is awesome. And you know what? I think we're going to do this a lot more. I think people are going to enjoy this. So, but I will see you on the flip side, brother. Thank you very much.
Yeah, see you around. Thanks, guys.
So I wanted to take a few moments for you guys and kind of reflect on what we just saw, right? Chris is a liberal, democratic socialist. Is he the evil character that people see? Is he the guy that you hear talked about on the right side of things? Am I the evil guy you hear talked about on the conservative side of things? You guys, the power of being able to communicate and have intelligent, peaceful, loving conversations is greater than you even know. It is literally the most powerful tool we have. And humanizing each other, learning that we are all Americans, accepting that we are all Americans, choosing to love each other instead, choosing to build other people up, choosing to have these conversations. Do you guys realize what we're on the brink of doing? Like what we can accomplish as a family, right? So whether you are conservative or Democrat or a liberal or a democratic socialist or whoever you are, whatever labels you attach yourself to, I ask you, for the sake of Breathe America, put those labels down, okay? Put those labels down. Put them down for yourself. We are Americans and Americans first. Chris has some great ideas. Now, some of those ideas are different than you've heard. Some of the reasons behind those ideas are different than what you've heard. But those ideas deserve to be heard, just like your ideas deserve to be heard. And it's how we communicate with each other that is ultimately going to bring us back together. So I'm here to ask again, be kind to each other in the comments. Stop defending your position. Open up. Try to learn from each other. Don't come with negative comments and hate and things like that. And I don't care if you're conservative or liberal. If that's the kind of comments that you want to make, I'm telling you, there are plenty of places that you can go and you can get a whole bunch of people that agree with you that want nothing more than to read the kind of comments that I've seen in the last few days here. I want something different for us. I want something better for us. I want to be able to learn from each other. I want us to be able to grow together, and I want us to be a family. And I want to treat every single one of you, and I want to see every single one of you treated with kindness, love, and respect at all times. That is what Breathe America is. And these conversations like this today, it's just one step forward. It's one brick, like we talk about building ourselves up brick by brick. Today's conversation is just one brick and moving in that direction where we recognize that as one people, one nation, the power lies with us. It always has, and it always will, because this is America. So if you're new here, first time you've watched this, or first time you've seen us talk, welcome to Breathe America. We do things a little bit differently here. And I'm very excited for all of you to be here. And I want you all to know how much I care and appreciate every single one of you and how much of an impact you make in my life every day. Be a little bit better tomorrow than you were today, you guys. Build yourself up. I love you. Have a wonderful night.